So we've reached the end. More than likely, the end of the Oden flashback, and I went back and rereading this flashback, I decided to talk about exactly my experience reading it week to week, and now my experience reading it all in one go, because I think it's slightly different, for me at least. So what we're going to do here today, we're going to talk about the flashback, things that I felt were done well, and some things I think could have been improved upon. And then at some point, maybe not in this video, we're going to rank this flashback, and that is comparing it to all the flashbacks in One Piece, because I think all the flashbacks in One Piece, they've had significant moments in the story which kind of it's changed my perception of certain things, and this is the same way. Today we're just going to evaluate it. We're going to try to keep this as concise as possible, but I really wanted to talk about the Oden flashback because I've been seeing a bunch of different things about it. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this poll, but there's a poll that was put up by King of Lightning, and people were asked which flashback was better, Corazon or Oden's, and Oden's won. That could be a bit of recency bias, but people did really enjoy the Oden flashback. Regardless of some of the noise that was out there, there's definitely a lot to like here. So without further ado, let's talk about this Oden flashback. And for us, well, for me at least, at the end of chapter 959, the samurai were at their wits' end. Before we saw Oden at the end of the chapter, they were talking about everything Oden done for them, like them becoming true samurai because of Oden. So we were trying to figure out exactly why do the scabbards have such undying loyalty for Oden? And that was explained to us in chapter 960 and beyond. Oden was literally larger than life. From waging war on the Yakuza, he was arrested for assault at 10. He abducted women from the capital. He caused an actual harem war. Who was this guy Oden? This was insane, reading it in real time. But eventually it became abundantly clear that Oden was misunderstood. The people had a perception of him, and of course, based on the Mountain God incident and that entire story, the people of Wano did not know who Oden was. They had a perception of him, and their reality was far from the truth. Kinemon did attempt to tell the truth, but Oden showed like a bit of his character there by saying, you know, not to tell them anything. So even after he was disowned by his father, he took it as an opportunity because of course his sights were set on leaving Wano. He wanted to set sail, but he was a terrible navigator. It's funny in hindsight looking back now where Oden told Yasu to get rid of Orochi because he's a creep, and it's like knowing the things that Orochi has done to Wano, Yasu should have listened to Oden. Like literally, Oden said he was a creep and he couldn't have been more correct. But with Oden being a larger than life character, he took on some subordinates. The first two were Kinemon and Denjiro, reluctantly, but regardless, he did, and they started following him. In some ways, I look at Yasu a bit differently, slightly differently after the reread, because I felt like with the things that were going on in Yasu's place, maybe he should have investigated a bit more. He kind of took Orochi's word as bond, and even though Orochi was just his manservant, it was like a lot of these strange things are happening. Shouldn't you care more about it? Because, you know, with Oden's living space, it was ransacked, which I believe was Orochi's doing, and then the money that was there, that was in the safe, Orochi said it was taken by Oden. But Yasu was skeptical of Orochi because it really didn't fit something Oden would do. But, you know, eventually Orochi was dismissed, but this laid the foundation for Orochi to become the disaster that he is now. And we'll talk about Orochi a bit as a character throughout the flashback and how I feel like some things were done well and some things were not done so well. But we'll get there. We saw the journey of Oden and how he came about meeting the scabbards. I enjoyed that a bit more after the reread, knowing the context of everything that was going to happen. However, I wanted a bit more. I wanted more of their story leading up to them meeting Oden. I feel like I didn't know enough about them. The scabbard that was the most surprising, I guess, upon reveal was Izo, because I mean, we know Izo was from Wano based on how Izo was dressed at Marineford, but knowing that Izo was definitely a retainer or a scabbard of Oden's, it was a cool thing to tie in. So based off this, eventually, of course, Whitebeard was going to show up at some point because Izo eventually ended up on Whitebeard's ship. So how did this happen? And again, we knew beforehand that Oden was on Whitebeard's ship and on Roger's ship. So for me as the reader, I'm anticipating at some point we see Roger and Whitebeard, and we see how he meets both of them and how does he traverse through Whitebeard's crew and then leaving his crew to join Roger's, because that's normally not how things take place. So at the time, upon reading this, I was really interested in how that was going to go down. The reveal of him keeping a journal as well was really good. I really enjoyed the fact that we were going to now delve into the thoughts of Oden, where Oda, I think, was trying to set up, giving us a deeper view of who Oden was as a character. We've heard a lot about him before then, but who was he? We really didn't know him. All we knew was that he was a great man and that he had great people following him. So now it was up to the story to convince us. Show us why Oden is great. People complained that at first it was a bit contrived because it seemed like Oda was going out of his way to build up Oden to be a certain type of character, and as people say in the community at Chad. And some people wanted more justification for Oden's personality. But I think, I mean, just like in life, some people just are. And I think for Oden as a character, he just was. He wanted the things he wanted, and for him going to Kuri to fight someone like Ashura Doji, that's what he wanted at the time, and that's what he did. And through sheer will and strength, he liberated the worst place at the time in Wano. And his words in Kuri were great as well, because he asked them to lend him their wisdom and strength, and that he's decided that these worthless hooligans needed Oden as their king. I think at that moment, him being a conqueror was evident. And of course, with Conqueror's Haki, we would have liked if that was explored a bit more, but I think personality traits are great as well, to see just the mindset of a conqueror. And for him, just strolling into Kuri and liberating it, it wasn't to impose his will. It was just something he wanted to do. And I think it's him testing himself as well. But that's the mindset of these conquerors. Sometimes it's just about testing yourself against the best, or the perceived best at the time. So after being disowned, Oden of course liberated Kuri, and then his father had no choice. Based on how Kuri was developed and the progression of that lawless area at the time, he made him a daimyo. And with Oden's growth, of course his followers, they had to grow as well. And through Oden, he made them official samurai, because these guys were just worthless hooligans. That's how they were viewed as far as by society in Wano. They were outcasts. A lot of them, they had nowhere to return to, and Oden provided that place for them. So again, I would have liked a bit more with them just living and enjoying life together. But again, seeing moments of them just showing their gratitude of Oden, his words, it seemed like they rang true to them. His words meant a lot. Like, they held on to his every word because of how impactful and how much charisma he carried himself with. And of course, Oden, because of how he was, people really liked him and people really believed in him. The person that believed in him the most, I think, was Yasu, in which he gave the scabbards money to become better people, to learn more so that they could be better for Oden. So they got better and they grew. And then them returning to the capital, you could see the growth. The people, they were gasping at how gallant the samurai looked. And again, Oden's words here, he said he was only made great and that he hadn't changed at all. And that was the truth. He was still the same person as when he got disowned. It's just that the people around him, based on who he was, they grew. And so for him, they were a reflection of that. So because of the people around you growing, it seemed like you grew as well. But in actuality, they did all they could to become great for Oden. The appearance of Whitebeard was a treat as well. I really enjoyed Whitebeard showing up to Wano, and we cannot forget Oden blitzing towards the shore to ask Whitebeard to let him join his crew, to ride on his ship. He was hell-bent on leaving Wano. And I think we have a perception of Whitebeard as a character, and I don't think that was changed at all in the flashback. It was just amplified even more. He's an honorable man, but also a family man. So for him and his dealings with rocks in the past, he was not going to let anything compromise this family that he's built, that he's cultivated. So he gave Oden a test he didn't think he would pass, holding on to a chain following the ship for 3 days. Oden pretty much completed the task, but he saw someone was in trouble and he let go. So this showed that Oden, even at the risk of something he really cared about, valued people over anything. And this was someone he didn't know. And this is what swayed Whitebeard to have him join the crew. And it was cool as well, because Whitebeard calling Oden little brother, that was the first time we've heard Whitebeard say anything like that to someone that was a part of his crew. So then it showed how much Whitebeard respected Oden as a person. He wasn't an underling. He was a partner. I think his first appearance in the flashback was important because it gave us an indication of who Roger was as a person. It wasn't more so about who Oden was. It was the fact that Oden was from somewhere that was closed off, so it made Oden more intriguing to him. So for Roger, being the inquisitive person that he is, he just wanted to meet Oden. He wanted to find out more about this closed off nation. And of course, I always love seeing Shanks and Buggy, especially the young Shanks and Buggy. We don't know of Toki's importance yet, but we know that she was born 800 years ago, and this is during the Void Century, so she is going to have some insight that we need to put this puzzle together that Oda left for us. But as far as the flashback, she was not really a factor. Some of her reactions were a bit weird, but Toki was not the focus of this flashback, for me at least. I mean, even for Oda, it seems like she was there and a plot point for us to explore at some point, but for right now, Toki, she provided support for Oden that he needed at the time. Oden's conversation with Toki is kind of overlooked, but I think it's really important in hindsight, because it tells a grander story, a greater story, where things should be explored with it. Where for Toki, she's born 800 years ago. She has the time fruit, she skipped forward. She doesn't know where she was born. Only thing she knows is that Wano was her parents' homeland. So this gives us so much insight. Were you born somewhere that didn't have a name at the time? When you jump forward, do you forget of everything that happened in the past? But you can't forget everything because you know of Wano and your parents' homeland. But we get to prophecy and things like that when Toki makes a statement like, well, after Oden says, well, I don't think the ship is going back to Wano for a while, she says that when I'm with you, I feel like I've already reached my destination, which is really profound because after sailing on the ships, they eventually make it back to Wano, and without Toki's power, they wouldn't have escaped the trials and tribulations that Kaido put them through. So, well, not Oden specifically, but the scabbards, Momonosuke. There's a lot to explore here with Whitebeard and Oden, but we'll focus on this small conversation where they're talking about Wano and the free world, where from Oden's perspective, his free country, quote unquote, is a prison because you can't leave and you're stuck there. For Whitebeard, and being a pirate, he is always chased by the Marines and the world government. And so for him, from his perspective, the outsider's perspective, Wano is a free country. So I really enjoyed the perspectives of those two characters where they're coming from totally different worlds and they see each other's world as a free world, where in actuality makes you think about, are you ever truly free? Which does make the occupation of a pirate daunting, because are you chasing something that you can never get? Where Luffy is chasing freedom, but is freedom really reachable? Is this a conquest that you cannot fulfill? So I really enjoy that conversation. I like the backstory for Orochi as far as like what drove him to do what he did, but Orochi's rise to power, it is one, I would say, of legend. He came from nothing. He was Yasu's manservant and he rose all the way to the top he rose to the top to be the shogun of Wano. That is impressive. Now granted, Orochi is more so a vehicle because he's not doing anything himself. Everything is being done by people behind the scenes. And then the old hag, she had a disdain for Wano and the people, the Kazuki in particular, because of things that were done to the Kurozumi in the past. So she did everything for Orochi. The devil fruit, manipulating Sukiyaki, putting him in position to be who he is. So I think the person that should get the most respect and the most credit for this uprising is probably the old hag, because she put in the work. She laid the groundwork for Orochi to do what he's doing now, but I guess that was the point of it, right? The panel of Roger, Rayleigh, Shanks, Scopper, Crocus, and those guys, him holding the Marine, is so beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful panels in One Piece, because this larger-than-life character, Roger, that we've known from the beginning of the series, we're seeing him in a different light now. Yes, he talks about him meeting Whitebeard for the last time, but he's so much younger. He looks healthy and he just looks like a monster, and it was just such a beautiful panel to experience in real time. And going back and looking at it, the Roger pirates just look so majestic. It was definitely a pleasure to experience this. Seeing the Whitebeard pirates going against the Roger pirates was great. I enjoyed the interactions with Roger and Rayleigh and Scopper, where we saw that Roger, he actually cares about fighting. That's something he really wants to figure out. He wants to be a part of it. Oden, of course, that's his thing as well, so he charged in headfirst and he got sent back by, surprisingly, a very competent swordsman in Roger. We saw him using a sword before, holding a sword I should say, but we've seen people do that before, but they have different fighting styles. He seemed to be very competent because he sent a very strong samurai flying. The clash between Whitebeard and Roger, I mean, those two goats just clashing without even touching blew me away, blew everyone away. And even the people, the bystanders, Oden in particular, saying they're not even touching, which shows there's another level up from even where Oden was. They fought for 3 days and nights, but at the end of it, they came and they started talking about things. And this is what led to Oden joining Roger's crew. We knew Oden would join Roger's crew, and from the get-go, Whitebeard's and Oden's, their whole destination, it wasn't the same. Oden wanted to experience as much as possible. Whitebeard wanted to maintain and cultivate his family. So at some point, they were going to part ways because Whitebeard, he had a cap, or he had a limit as to what he wanted to experience. And he felt like by having his family with them, that's all he needed. Where Roger, he wanted it all. He wanted to go as far as it could take him, finding out the ancient history, poneglyphs, everything. Roger wanted that. And he knew he needed someone like Oden who could read the poneglyphs and translate different things that could help him get to his destination. I hate when people downplay Whitebeard because of what Oden said, because Oden said Roger was off the charts, but the actual translation says here, White Kichi was a great man, but Roger too was off the charts, which indicated that these guys were both great in their own right. Where one wasn't necessarily greater than the other in Oden's eyes, they were just great in different ways. Scopper actually establishing some personality here was great too, where he seems to be the mouthpiece of the crew. Where Rayleigh was a bit more quiet, and I think that was on purpose because Rayleigh, again, he's such a fan favorite. If Rayleigh does too much, he takes over the entire flashback. So I think Rayleigh was in reserve on purpose. Roger's journey and the tie-in with the current time is great as well, with Frankie meeting Oden, the stuff with Shirahoshi and Madame Shirley, the importance of Zoe and even him meeting Pedro, finding out that there was a poneglyph in Fishman Island, a road poneglyph in Fishman Island, the declaration of Roger being the king of the pirates, and just seeing all this through the prism of just Oden's journal. And then Oda drawing Roger, I think every time a bit older, showing the deterioration of his health, which is weird because Roger was getting closer to the thing he wanted the most, but then something he really couldn't control was affecting that. The realization of Roger finding the One Piece, that panel of him laughing, saying he wished he had been born in Joy Boy's time. It gave a different perspective to the treasure. We now started to wonder, could the One Piece just be a story? And this story is going to tie everything together for us at the end. And so it's kind of building the anticipation of what the One Piece is. I'm interested in that story. The disbanding of the Roger Pirates is very sad as well, because Roger, everyone is breaking down because that's their captain. He was, going off and trying to live out his last year in happiness. And we know that's where, Ace was conceived and Roger met with Whitebeard, but he did it on his own terms. So you really enjoyed that. After Oden got back to Wano, that's when things, I think, changed in the story. It went from a really endearing story, one of just so much happiness, so much fulfillment, success, determination, to one of despair, trickery, deception. And this was the foundation of who Orochi was. And Orochi tricking Oden to dance, holding people hostage, building weapons, changing Wano from what it was. Now, people blame Oden for that because he left Wano and went to do his own thing. But for the same people, I ask you, how many people know when it's time to leave, when it's time to do your own thing? Of course, you can be held by the shackles of tradition if you want to, but especially in this era, people don't do that anymore. People go out and venture out and do things their own way. Eventually, they might come back. I may come back and do things, the way my family would want, but I have to find out my own way. And that's what Oden did. That's why I respect him so much for following his dream. Even for him leaving a great situation with Whitebeard, he took that chance. And you have to respect that. And the thing with Kaido, him fighting Kaido and overcoming Kaido, the war, and then at the end, him holding up his scabbards and showing them that even though he is the leader, he's willing to risk his life so that they can fly, so that they can accomplish his goal for him. And of course, he knows the history of the world. So he was telling them, just open Wano. That has to be done because, of course, that has greater importance for the end of One Piece. In totality, it was a great flashback. Rereading it, I find myself laughing and just enjoying these small moments that I overlooked week to week. But in totality, this is beautiful. It's a beautiful story, an amazing end because of how Oden went out. It's a story of honor, a story of adventure, but also a story of despair. Oden's naivete is a part of him, and that essentially made him who he was. And I think because he was so naive, he was authentic, and his scabbards felt that, and people around him felt it. So that's why he was loved by everyone that met him. He was a light. He was brilliant. And I really enjoyed how Oda told the story of Oden in this flashback. We didn't know who Oden was before, but we definitely do now. And I think based off what we know about him, this man is a great man. He was a great man. And this flashback, of course, changed my perception of different things. Not only Oden, but Wano and the end of it, but also Shinobu. For the scabbards, if we had gotten more of them, I think I would have changed my perception of just how much I'm invested in their story. But overall, a great flashback. Covered all his bases. Personally, the meathead in me, I would have liked to see that 3-day fight. Not all of it, obviously, but maybe a clash between Rayleigh and Oden. Some more clashes between Whitebeard and Roger, but I'm okay with it. I've come to terms with what One Piece is, and it was great. But guys, give me your thoughts. What are your thoughts? But guys, let me know. What are your thoughts of this flashback after the fact? If you went back and reread it, how do you feel now? Even towards the end, or at the end of it, has it changed for you? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? There are things that could have been better here and there, but it's fulfilling. Not gonna lie to you. Granted, my meathead side, liking fights and power scaling and all that stuff, is crying out for more. But as far as story, I think it did well. It did really well. Some moments of execution week to week definitely fell flat. Like the Oden versus Kaido moment, at the time was like, is this the hour of legend? A few chapters later, it's like, oh, so this was the hour of legend. Great flashback. Again, give me your thoughts. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BroggoDAce. Follow me on Instagram at BroggoD.Ace. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Again, like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.